So I'm a little bit ill because I've been traveling a lot lately, and it's always raining. And when I came here on Wednesday, it was all day raining, but I did sightseeing, so I get really wet and really cold. But lucky to today and yesterday, it's very, very nice weather. I came from Prague. Has anybody been to Czech Republic? Cool, cool, very nice. It's kind of small country than Moscow, because we have like 10 million people in whole country. So this is like very, very crazy big city for me. Well, I came to talk about you about code refactoring and how to make it much more effective than we are used to. Thing is that when you create an application, you have to learn new framework. For example, Symfony, and you learn Symfony 2, then there is Symfony 3, and you have to constantly learn about new patterns, about how to integrate Elasticsearch or Redis, and your application grows, and the bigger it is, the more code you have to maintain and develop. And not only frameworks, but also PHP itself develops. Last few releases where like every year there's just one release. So if you have huge code base on some old PHP version, I'm just curious, how many are using PHP 7 and more? Cool. What? Everyone. And somebody using PHP 5? Cool. So I think you'll find this talk very useful. 4? 3? So if you are into PHP and you maintain some PHP application, you have to actually upgrade it once a year or maybe once a few years, but with new features of that exact new version. For example, with PHP 7.0, there are like strict types and type declarations. 7.1, there are void types. Now there are coming like type properties into 7.4 and so on. So you have to like constantly learn and constantly develop, which kind of sucks because not only PHP, but also frameworks. For example, Symfony has the cycle even shorter. It's not like every year, but it's, I think, twice a year. So twice a year, and now it's coming Symfony 4.3. So if you have Symfony application and PHP, you have to do some upgrades 3 times a year, which is kind of boring. There are a few ways how to make this easier, how to upgrade your code or how to migrate your code more faster, so you don't have to look at GitHub, look at upgrade MD and so other files. You can hire a consultant that will help you because he has some experience with upgrading these legacy code bases, and he, for example, upgraded 50 applications from PHP 5 to 7.4, so he can help you. But the problem is it's very expensive, and he has to help you with a very specific problem, and you have to hire him every year or 2, so it's a very daunting task. Another problem is, or basically all this leads to that your code becomes legacy from the moment you wrote it. So, for example, when I was coding these pharmacy applications, I think 6 years ago, I had to create a mail module for newsletters, and that is turned into PDF. And I felt really guilty that somebody will have to rewrite it after me after 2 years. So it was kind of an unpleasant feeling because you know that every code you write will be deleted one day. And it's not just code, but it's also knowledge. For example, with Zend 1, Symfony 1, 2, and maybe Laravel, there are these like static containers. And now we are slowly moving to constructor injection. So when you use some old knowledge, you basically prepare the application to be upgraded to some new knowledge. And let's say we have now Symfony 4 and PHP 7.3, but in 5 years it will be legacy and it will be really, really unpleasant to work with. The other problem is also the size of the application. If you have some very small application, you need to upgrade PHP. It's quite easy. But bigger the application, the more problematic it is. So in the end, you probably end up with an application that is very big. You have to add some small button into form, but it's weak of work because you have to edit other places and it can crash. And this is like normal way how we work, right? Like it's big, it's legacy, it takes time, so it costs extra money and it costs maintenance. And we think this is okay and this is the best we can do. But I don't think so. And to prove it, I tried an experiment with Rector. We migrated one application from one framework to another. It had like 45,000 K of lines without tests, without migrations, and all this like boilerplate code. And we just switched framework because native is kind of like not supported anymore in a good way in our country. It's actually like Czech-based framework. Does anybody knows it? Or maybe Tracy or Latte? They're like cool for people. So as you can see, it's not that popular. But I think that's problem with many frameworks. I noticed anybody use Code Igniter or Ye or Cake PHP? Cake PHP? Cake, it's like food, yeah. Okay, so the problem is like these frameworks started somewhere, but or Zend 1 maybe, and now they are going down, and you need to switch to something that's maintained, that's developed, because you want to hire new developers that enjoy coding, and you don't want to teach them something very old. So just if you see this, actually this is pull request of the migration itself. Like we created one pull request with 50 commits, and just have a guess. How long do you think it took to migrate? And you cannot answer. A year, okay? Some other number? 2 years. 5 days. Whoa, that would be cool. 10 years. You would pay for it? Okay, so I'll show you in a bit. First, I want to show you like 2 or 3 samples of what we had to migrate on a large scale. Basically, when you want to refactor, when you want to refactor some legacy code, there are some anti-patterns. For example, you have static everywhere, or you have singletons, or you have service locator. And this is like called pattern. And there was this pattern of static creation because there were no services, no constructor injection. So it was created manually by new OK response. To move, I don't imagine like you have like 3,000 places with new response, and you want to move it to service constructor injection. You have to think about like where the places are, how to get that into constructor, how to create property, if there is parent class, how to pass the service to parent constructor, and so on. So instead of doing this manually, we created a rule that did it for us, that went through code and did this simple job for us. Well, simple. And the other sample is from routing, because different frameworks have different routing in the applications. Some define it in YAML, some define it in ini, some define it in annotations, like for example, Symfony. And in Nete, all the routes are defined in very single service. And we had to move all these 151 routes to each control, which was also kind of crazy to do it manually, because you have to think about if it's get or post, or what the string is, the name of the route. And also my friend, he created constants, so it was not just string, but he had to jump to some constant, get the value, find the responsible control, and add the annotation. So that was a lot of work if we do it manually. But instead of doing manually, we used the Rector I'm talking about. I'll show you how technically it works a little later. And from all this knowledge, we created a set that you can use. So if there are probably not many people using Nete here, but in the future there will be frameworks like Zend 1 to Symfony 4. So the set will be available like basically on GitHub, and you can download it and just run it. And the answer in the end was it took us 80 hours, but I think it could be shorter because we actually had to prepare this set. So now the set is done, so the knowledge is already somewhere else. So now I think it could take like 10 or 15 hours. And that's the, I think, main advantage of what I call like pattern refactoring, that you don't focus on each single file in every pieces of your code, but you pick just one pattern, for example, this new, or you want to migrate, I don't know, active record to entity and repository. And even if you have like 2,000 entities, you don't care about the number. All you care is about just this one pattern. So the bigger the application is, the faster the migration can be. So if you stop focusing on the like each single file refactoring and start thinking in patterns, I think like it's possible to migrate any framework to another framework or legacy framework to some open source framework in a very short time. So now something more technical, so you know how it works. Does anybody know PHP parser here? Or PHP stand? Cool. So this is kind of like PHP parser is for the others. Is a tool that analyzes your code and allows you to create abstract syntax tree, which is something like reflection or tokens, and you can very well analyze the code statically. You know what the type is, what's the name of the property, in what class it is, and so on. And the another tool that uses PHP parser is Psalm. Is anybody using Psalm? It's like static analyzer from Mugluk, a program who works in Vimeo. It's like YouTube, but smaller. And Rector is actually using PHP parser itself and some part of analysis from PHP stan. So it knows what the type of the node is, what the class is, if it's new, some type, and so on. So I would like to show you a little demo. I hope the text is good size. I try to like prepare it so you can see it even in the back. But if you don't see it, just tell me. This. So can you see it? Oh. Okay. I can see it here, but I cannot see it here. Maybe now? Yeah, I need the mirror. Awesome. Can you see it? Yes. Awesome. Okay, so I have a few sets here for you just to show how Rector works. For those who use old PHP, I've created PHP rule sets. Let's look at some code. And the thing is, like, PHP parser can also work with spaghetti code. So if you have something very, very, very old written in spaghetti, it's not impossible to automatically refactor it. I've looked at one project in Czech Republic. We spent like, I don't know, 1 to 3 weeks on it, but it didn't make like any final result. But I think like custom refactoring, even if spaghetti code is possible. And like for example, PHP Storm itself gives you some hints like what can be completed if you use some proper PHP version. And he knows that this is return type integer. And also static analysis knows this. If we look here, just a little quiz about how to improve code base. Do you know how would you refactor this part of code to make it into 1 or 2 lines? Switch statement? That would be 4 lines, maybe. That's too long for me. Mm-hmm. And how would you write it? Uh-huh. Cool. Yeah. 1 line. Very nice. Okay, and how would you simplify this statement? Mil equals. Okay, and shorter? Ternary? Like meal equals dinner ternary? Yeah, okay. Because another thing that Rector can do, even if you are on the most updated PHP code, you can also have this this somewhat complicated code. So if you want to make this what we did manually or thinking in automated way, you would just run Rector is just like binary, so you can download it, compose the require Rector, then use compose Rector process and the path to the file and there's this level code quality. Level is basically something like set, so it's a group of rules that do something together. And if you are not sure, like if the change would be right, just run it in dry run, and it should show you what will it do for you. So yeah, here you answered right. It could be null coalescent. Here it could refactor to this, and maybe in 1 step later it can also do the ternary. It depends how you configure it. So it looks all good. So let's run it. And now if you look back to the code, you see it was refactored in the way you expect it. I mean, this is not that useful in 2 methods, but imagine you have like code review and this 1,000 of lines, and you want to start do code reviews, and you don't want to annoy your junior programmers with all this technical stuff. So we can use actually a Rector in a continuous integration. If somebody sends pull request, you can run the rule set like this, and it will change. It will notice him about anything that you would say in a technical way. So you can save your time and you can educate the developer. Yeah, here we have some type declarations and also something. Do you know how would you refactor this one? This method? Return the result of condition. Array find. In array. Or is set. Or in array. Array keys. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I mean like, where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. Like array keys. Items. Array. I see. And somebody said in array or? In array? Yeah? Oh. So it's like slower? Uh-huh. Good. Good job. Okay, and this one? I think this is the most complicated one here.
It's about array keys and using strict mode and taking the first result from expression.
Uh-huh. And do you think this can be written in one line? Array key. Uh-huh.
That's it.
One more time, sorry.
So why don't we use just strict check? So we have a key and we have value to check. So simple check, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah.
You can use callers here too. So
Yeah, maybe.
Old function with key, current function.
Yeah.
Or now.
Like this, something.
Yes, like this.
Cool, cool. So the thing is, like, as you can see, like finding all this micro optimization can be really hard and take a lot of time. But it's very easy to write it in AST. So if we try running Rector on this file, it's type declarations. Yeah. Yeah. So as you said, like in array, good job. In array, and this one was null call SC. And this is kind of problem like with there is a key and there's a value, and you have to think if it's value or a key, because sometimes, yeah. So this is like code quality level. You can put it in your CI and just run it all the time. Another level, if you need to upgrade PHP, could be like PHP 7.1. This would dry run, which will autocomplete the type hints, type declarations, and not just like from the doc blocks, because as you can see, type declarations is course from, yeah. For example, before there was no, or yeah, there is no return bool, but static analysis again knows like there is only one return and it's bool, so probably this must be bool, obviously, or the return type of in array is also bool. So if you run it, it will autocomplete the type declarations even if you don't have doc block. Yeah, this is string. This is something more complicated. What should we note? Yeah, so it also goes through all the returns, and it can like guess or analyze like, okay, we have return, but it's always string, so return type is always string. And if you're into something more new, what's the time? Time is good. If you're into something, I don't know if it's something new in 7.2, no. Maybe 7.4. I'd use it. Oh, wrong directory. By the way, is anybody using 7.3 or 7.4? Cool. So if you're using 7.4, wrong directory, PHP, yeah. And you want to type properties, and you have a lot of properties in your code. And you have annotations, or I think you don't even have to have annotations, but I don't have the use case here, because static analysis can guess that if we have the only assign of this name, and we know it's a string, then even if there will be no annotation, the static analysis can guess this is a string. So let's run it and see what happens. Yeah, so you can see like it converts this iterable. For example, what's sometimes problematic with PHP stand is that it gives priority to the doc block. So actually, on my last presentation, I had a bug, and this got turned into bool, which is not true because the default value is string. So Rector can analyze the code and gives the priority to the code itself instead of annotation, because often it happens that annotations are not right. So let's see the code itself. Yeah. As you can see, I don't have PHP 7.4, but thanks to PHP parser that already supports type properties, you can already use it like this. So it completes this and skips callable that is not supported. The last fun set is that code that you can also put into your CI, and this set does what you probably expect it to do. Is it tries to find code that is not used anymore. Yeah, that's the problem when you use because I have invalid code here, and I don't have PHP 7.4, so it would break. One more time. Yay. So, if you have somewhere some dead method that does absolutely nothing and is never called in the application, and even if it's public, you can remove it if you're not doing open source. So use this. Because if you're using open source, you probably might use this method. But in your private code base, I think with most developers here do, there can be like many old public methods that you just forgot to remove or to upgrade. And same goes with variables. Source tests. Oh, there's not more that goat. Okay. So this and code quality is something you can put into your CI and just see what happens. And the last example is something that might be related to you if you use Twig or any templating or any project that got changed from underscore namespaces to normal namespaces. I prepared a small class that uses all classes. It's also like PHP Storm shows you it's deprecated. So if you can look inside, you see that we should not use this underscored version, but the new one with namespaces. And the problem is it's not as easy as to use some regular expressions and replace it with, of course, I want to edit, replace it with slashes, because, well, here it's class, but also it's not just Twig extension, but it's in this directory and it's renamed. So there are like many cases. So again, you can use prepared set that should do it for you. Let's see. Yeah, it's called Twig underscore to namespace. So if you run it, you can see like it converts the filter extension and the names in the namespaces. And not only here, but also in tests, because I wrote a little test for it, of course. There's like the extension is created, and then we call a filter. There's not actually any type declarations, I think. Yeah, so here we don't care. Back to the extension. So let's run it without. Yeah. And as you can see, like it replaced everything. The one thing that you might be surprised is that Rector or AST doesn't work with coding standards. So usually the code is modified with spaces that are kept, but sometimes there are some extra spaces or duplicated namespaces or use statements that are not used. So you can use coding standard to clean it up, or there's also prepared statement in Rector that you can also use to clean it up for you. And another nice level is code style. It's not code style. This is actually exception that shows you all the sets. Okay, so it's coding style. Yeah, and what it does is that imports all the namespaces from files, from classes, from use statements, from doc blocks. Because there is also this also can be parsed into some kind of AST, so you have it under control. Okay, and the last example is with tests. Is somebody using PHP unit to write tests? Very nice, very nice. So let's first start vendor bin PHP unit test. If it works, it works. More colors. Yay. Okay, so tests work now. That's good. In PHP unit, there are also some BC breaks, like expected exception annotations were changed to this expect annotation something. I don't really remember. And you have to be careful because sometimes this annotation can have like second argument, and it's a number, and you have to transfer. And there are like a lot of very weird cases. And you can also use Rector for it, because I myself write PHP unit tests and I needed to upgrade them, so I created a rule set for it. So if we get back here, tests level PHP unit 7, I think. Yeah, so we can run it. It looks good. And it actually removed the annotations and moves them right to the code. It also respects this because the class might not exist, so it doesn't convert it to class. So if you have test cases where it's like, I don't know, again, hundreds cases like this, you can just run it. It will move the code, and you're done, basically. By the way, any questions? Yeah? Yeah, I will show you. Just Rector is normally on GitHub, and there's this directory. Is it big enough? Yeah, time is good. Directory, and there's config and level, and here you can see the levels that are now supported. It can be like something basic like coding style or code quality, but doctrine, that is just like small change. Laravel has few sets that you can use. Again, it focuses on PHP, so if there's some PHP change that was BC break and can be changed 1 to 3 or A to B, you can just use this. And also, the most supported is, I guess, Symfony, because I use it, and there are a lot of packages and BC breaks, and so there are like sets to support this migration. So for example, if you need to migrate very old Symfony project, you can combine it with Symfony sets and with PHP sets, because old Symfony used very old PHP. And just to give you an idea how the set looks like, we can look at this PHP unit. Yeah, 7. Oh. One more time. 7.0. And it's basically Symfony service config. There's like nothing special about it. So you can import other configs there. This is one for these exception annotations, and you can register services there. And each service can access some arguments, like for example, if you find a type of test case and there's annotation scenario, just change it to test. And that's how you configure the sets. So back to the demo. Back from the demo, I need to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it works. So there's just one more tip. If you are using PHP stan. Oh, it's too small. Well, basically, in PHP stan tells you if there is some type that is not correct, that you should complete it. There was added this feature. There is 53 errors. It's very hard to see. there's added this feature that even callbacks should have return type hints. So again, like PHP stand will report these errors for you, but if there's like hundreds and hundreds of this error, this is really annoying. But in Rector, this type declaration set has this feature that these type declarations will be auto-copied for you. So you don't have to do it manual anymore. Here we like changed 42 cases. So if I run the PHP stand again, there is only like 6 errors. So you just like save like 80% of errors. So how you can use Rector today? You can put it in your CI with these basic 2 sets and see what happens, like experiment it with it. If you like it, you can use some more sets. I'm developing Rector as open source in my free time. So if you like it or if you need some help, just like contact me or support me on Patreon. And if you like this topic of static analysis and AST, there are 3 more talks today that might be interesting for you, where you get more insights how all this works. So thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you very much for your talk. But I was a bit disappointed because we usually refactor to make code which is not working to code which is working. But you showed us mostly code which is already working to a working code, like adding type declarations. I would like to see deprecated functionality changed, not new functionality added, but deprecated functionality changed to working functionality.
I see. So yeah, PHP. I have to. Yes. Thank you for your question. It's a good point. This is something that you can see in PHP upgrades because there are like many deprecations. There was one great function that's my favorite. Maybe on GitHub it will be easier. Because Rector can also like add functionality, that's true. But what's most important for the upgrades themselves is that something is deprecated and you need to create function, anonymous function. Yeah. For example, this is a very nice example. WordPress, it's my favorite framework. And let's say you have a great function like this, and this was deprecated, I think, in PHP 7.2, and you have to figure out like what's going on, what are the arguments, what's global variable, what's local scope, what is string, and what is variable, and what is escape variable, and all this crazy stuff. And what rectors do is actually result like before after. It will parse the code and create the alternative that works. So if you talk about something that's old and doesn't work anymore and is deprecated and is open sourced, then there is probably some migration path you can use. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah, here.
I wonder how stable is this. So if I run this with my code base without and just push it to production, what is the probability that something will work?
I wouldn't do it.
So how much time I will need to waste to look at the changes?
If I use the practical example from the Neta to Symfony migration, we created the set. It took us like 40 hours. Then 10 more hours was this weird bug we had in one subscriber. 7 subscribers, something in circle. So it took us like, I think, 30% of time to just check it and if it's all okay. But it depends on the size. So like it will not all do work for you, but it will make the easy things like this or move something to constructor injection much simpler.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So what I do when I use Rector, what I do is just like I run it first with dry run, and if like there are no fatal errors, then I run it. Then I see pull request if it's okay, and if tests pass, and if all this passes, then I'm pushing to the code review just to be sure, and then maybe production or staging server.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question about the internals, so how it works inside. Can you show us some code of one of the inspections or refactorings? Thanks.
Can it be this one, for example?
Yeah, sure.
When we are just looking at it. Okay. So it's basically a service that extends abstract Rector or implements PHP Rector interface, because there's also like one for file system. And what's important here is there are 3 methods basically. Get definition is for documentation, and so you know what's going on. Say create before after. Then you subscribe to, this is the second one, it's important that you subscribe to a node. So PHP parser goes through all your code, and if there's function call, it goes to the refactor method. And by function call, I mean like, just to be sure, like anything. So it can be like array merge, it can be your function. So if there is something like this, it will continue. And then it's in a refactor method, and then you validate if it's the correct type, if it's correct context, correct name. If it's not create function, you don't care about it, and just return null, so nothing happens. And here is this is quite also short, somewhat. So here it basically takes the string and parses into node, and then creates a closure, which is anonymous function, and then you complete parameters, use statement, or body. So you basically you get some node, you analyze if it's the correct node, and then you either modify it or create a new one. And this like logic is basically from PHP parser, because there's like nodes for closure, param, and so on. And then you just return it back, and that's it. All right?
Thanks for the talk. Okay. Did you try to run your Rector for your Rector itself?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. It's addictive, yeah. I'm not sure. I think there should be some old rule. That's why I love to develop Rector, because if I find out I'm doing some anti-pattern and I want to refactor it, it's not like it will take years. It will take like day. And I think I have some example in very old tech. Let's see. Configure, yeah. Yeah, for example, I had, yeah. No, this one is better, because examples and merge is candidate Rector. Yeah, for example, this one was very nice. You can see what it's jumping. Stop jumping. I'm sorry. Examples, merge is candidate, and okay, so this is what it did. There's also some how long time it took to me to write it, and how much stress it saved. And basically it changes like merge 2 methods or separate them, or change, for example, if you have PHP unit and there is this data provider and it's array, and you want to use yield because it's one less nesting, and you have thousands of tests, it's like crazy, but there's a rule for it, so you can run it and you can upgrade it. So it's really, really fun to use Rector to refactor the Rector. Okay, so if there are no more questions, please give me feedback on joined in, and if you need to refactor something or to something new, just give me a call. Thank you.